There's a kind of love that doesn't shout, it whispers. It shows up in the small things. The way she makes coffee just the way I like it, how she tucks our youngest child into bed every night, or the quiet strength she brings to our family when life gets hard. That's my wife, Sarah. She's the glue that holds us together, the one who puts everyone else first without expecting anything in return. So when she told me about her upcoming business trip, I knew we had to do something special for her. Not because she asked for it, but because she deserved it. It's only 3 days, she said casually over breakfast, scrolling through emails on her phone. I'll be back before you know it. But to us, 3 days felt like forever. Sarah wasn't just a mom or a wife. She was the heartbeat of our home. Without her, the house felt quieter, the mornings slower, and the evenings lonelier. That's when the idea came to me. What if we surprised her? I suggested to the kids later that evening. Their eyes lit up instantly. Like, sneak attack surprise? Asked Jake, our 12-year-old, already grinning at the thought. Exactly, I said, leaning forward. We fly out to see her, show up unannounced, and make her feel like the most important person in the world. Emma, our 8-year-old, clapped her hands excitedly. Can we bring balloons? And maybe a banner that says, "We love you"? Of course, I replied, smiling despite the lump forming in my throat. Because as much as this trip was about surprising Sarah, it was also about reminding myself and her of what mattered most. Us. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning. We booked last-minute flights, packed light, except for Emma's insistence on bringing stuffed animals, and even practiced keeping secrets. A challenge for Jake, who couldn't resist teasing his sister with fake spoilers. Through it all, I found myself reflecting on our marriage. Sure, life had been busy lately. Work deadlines, school events, endless chores. But hadn't we always managed to find time for each other? Or had we drifted apart without realizing it? Still, none of those doubts could dampen my excitement. By the time we boarded the plane, I was convinced this would be the moment we needed. A chance to reconnect, laugh together, and remind Sarah just how much she meant to us. As the plane soared above the clouds, I held Emma's hand and watched Jake fidget with his headphones. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. Little did I know, the real surprise awaited us on the ground. The idea of surprising Sarah felt like a gift. Not just to her, but to all of us. It gave us something to focus on, a shared mission that brought us closer together as a family. But pulling it off wasn't going to be easy. Between coordinating schedules, keeping the secret intact, and navigating the chaos of last-minute travel plans, there were moments when I wondered if we'd bitten off more than we could chew. On the plane, the chaos continued. Emma spilled apple juice on the seat next to her, earning us disapproving looks from the passenger beside her. Jake complained endlessly about the lack of Wi-Fi while I tried and failed to mediate between the two. Despite the madness, there were moments of pure joy too. Watching Emma press her face against the window during takeoff, marveling at the clouds below, reminded me why we were doing this. Even Jake cracked a smile when the flight attendant handed out snacks, though he pretended to ignore it afterward. By the time we landed, exhaustion had set in, but so had determination. We grabbed our bags, hailed a cab, and headed straight for Sarah's hotel. Remember the plan, I whispered to the kids as we approached the lobby. We wait until she comes out. Then surprise. Emma giggled nervously, clutching the banner tighter. Jake adjusted his headphones, trying to act cool despite the anticipation bubbling beneath the surface. As we stood there, rehearsing our big reveal, none of us could have guessed what awaited us upstairs. The cab ride to the hotel was a blur of excitement and nervous energy. Jake stared out the window, tapping his foot impatiently, while Emma clutched the banner so tightly her knuckles turned white. I tried to keep the mood light, cracking jokes about how Sarah would react when she saw us. She's gonna scream, Jake predicted with a grin. Like, full-on freak out. And cry, Emma added, bouncing in her seat. Happy tears, though. I nodded, forcing a smile. Exactly. This is gonna be amazing. But beneath the surface, unease gnawed at me. Something about this trip felt off. Maybe it was the way Sarah had sounded on the phone before we left. Distracted, almost evasive. Or maybe it was just my own paranoia creeping in. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When we arrived at the hotel, the lobby buzzed with activity. Business travelers checked in and out, bellhops wheeled luggage across marble floors, and the faint hum of conversation filled the air. We lingered near the elevators, rehearsing our plan one last time. "Okay, team," I said, glancing at the kids. "Let's make this perfect." Emma nodded eagerly, while Jake rolled his eyes but smiled anyway. As we waited for the elevator, I noticed a man walking toward us. A tall, well-dressed guy in his late 30s. He glanced at us briefly, then stepped into the elevator ahead of us. For some reason, his presence stuck in my mind, though I couldn't explain why. Once upstairs, we made our way to Sarah's room, balloons and banner in hand. My heart raced as I knocked on the door, imagining her face lighting up with surprise. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. "Maybe she's not here?" Emma whispered, her voice tinged with disappointment. Before I could respond, voices echoed down the hallway. Turning, I saw Sarah emerge from around the corner, laughing softly. She looked radiant, her hair swept back, wearing an outfit I didn't recognize. But what stopped me cold was the person beside her, the same man from the elevator. They weren't holding hands, but their body language said enough. He leaned in slightly as they spoke, his hand resting casually on her arm. Her laughter faded as she spotted us standing there, frozen in shock. For a moment, no one moved. Then Sarah's face went pale, her smile vanishing instantly. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely audible. We came to surprise you," I stammered, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The man beside her cleared his throat awkwardly, stepping back. "I should probably go." "No," I said sharply, surprising even myself. "Stay. Let's all talk about this." Sarah's eyes darted between me, the kids, and the stranger, panic flashing across her features. "It's not what it looks like," she began, but her voice trailed off, weak and unconvincing. Jake shifted uncomfortably, while Emma clutched the banner to her chest, tears welling up in her eyes. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Is that true?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she looked away, unable to meet any of our gazes. In that moment, everything shifted. The joy we'd carried with us, the hope, the love, it shattered like glass. The hallway felt suffocating, the air thick with tension and unspoken truths. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the woman standing in front of me with the one I'd loved for over a decade. This couldn't be real, it had to be some kind of misunderstanding. But as I stared at Sarah, her guilt written plainly across her face, denial gave way to cold, hard reality. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice low but sharp enough to cut through the silence. Sarah hesitated, glancing at the man before turning back to me. "Mike, please. Let's not do this here." "No," I snapped, stepping closer. "You don't get to decide where or when we deal with this. Not after what you've done." Jake tugged on my sleeve, his voice trembling. "Dad, what's going on?" I didn't answer him, not yet. All my focus was on Sarah, demanding answers she clearly didn't want to give. "Tell them," I said, gesturing to the kids. "Tell them who he is." Her eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent. The stranger shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking up. "Look, maybe I should leave." "You're not going anywhere," I interrupted, my tone icy. "Not until I understand exactly what's been happening here." Emma started crying softly, clutching the banner like it was a lifeline. Jake stood frozen, his usual bravado replaced by confusion and fear. "Please," Sarah begged, her voice cracking. "Can we talk about this privately? The kids don't need to see this." "The kids already saw it," I shot back, gesturing toward the scene we'd walked in on. "They saw you laughing with him, touching his arm like you've known him for months. So no, we're not doing this behind closed doors. You owe us an explanation. Right here, right now. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, slowly, she nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. His name is Ryan, she admitted, her voice barely audible. We've been seeing each other. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Seeing each other. She made it sound so casual, so innocent. But there was nothing innocent about this. How long? I demanded, my fists clenched tightly at my sides. A few months, she whispered, avoiding my gaze. A few months, I repeated, incredulous. While we were still living under the same roof. While you were pretending everything was fine. I didn't mean for it to happen, she cried, tears streaming down her face. It just did. I felt so alone, Mike. So trapped. You're always working, always distracted. I needed someone who understood me, who made me feel alive again. So instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat? I shouted, my voice echoing down the hallway. Instead of fixing whatever problems we had, you threw it all away for him? I didn't throw anything away, she protested, her voice rising. I needed space, a way out. But I never stopped loving you. Loving me? I echoed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing it. Emma sobbed louder, burying her face in Jake's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her protectively, though his own expression was a mix of anger and disbelief. This isn't fair, Sarah pleaded, looking at the kids. They didn't ask for this. They didn't ask for any of it, I agreed coldly. But they're the ones who'll suffer because of your choices. Ryan tried to intervene again, placing a hand on Sarah's arm. Maybe we should. Don't touch her, I growled, taking a step forward. Don't you dare pretend you care about her now. He backed off immediately, raising his hands in surrender. By this point, other guests had begun to notice the commotion. A few people lingered nearby, pretending not to listen while sneaking curious glances our way. We're leaving, I announced, turning to the kids. Now. But Dad. Jake began, his voice wavering. No arguments, I said firmly. Grab your stuff. We're done here. As we walked away, leaving Sarah and Ryan standing in stunned silence, I felt a surge of emotions. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak, but above all, determination. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the time we reached the hotel lobby, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold onto Emma's suitcase. The kids were quiet now, their earlier excitement replaced by shock and sadness. Jake kept glancing at me, his expression a mix of anger and confusion, while Emma clung to her stuffed rabbit, tears still streaming down her face. I wanted to comfort them, to tell them everything would be okay. But how could I? Their world had just been turned upside down, and there was no sugarcoating what we'd witnessed. Instead, I focused on getting us out of there, hailing a cab and loading everyone inside without saying a word. Once we were safely back at our own hotel, a budget chain a few miles away, I finally allowed myself to process what had happened. Sitting alone in the dimly lit room, I replayed the scene over and over in my mind. Sarah laughing with Ryan, her hand resting casually on his arm, the look of panic on her face when she saw us. Each memory fueled the fire burning inside me. Anger, hurt, and a growing desire for revenge. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about justice, for me, for the kids, and for the life she'd shattered with her lies. The next morning, I started gathering evidence. Using Sarah's laptop, which she'd left logged into her email account, I uncovered a trail of incriminating messages between her and Ryan. Flirty exchanges, plans to meet up, even declarations of love. One message stood out. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to do it again soon. Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. But instead of letting the pain consume me, I channeled it into action. I compiled screenshots of the emails, along with photos I'd secretly taken in the hallway outside her room. Then, I drafted an anonymous email to Ryan's workplace, attaching the evidence and exposing their affair. Thought you should know about your employee's extracurricular activities, I wrote. Hope this helps clarify why he's been so busy lately. Next, I turned my attention to Sarah. Her career meant everything to her, a source of pride and identity, and I knew exactly how to hit her where it hurt most. Using her work email, I forwarded select messages to her boss, framing them as part of a routine audit request. By the end of the day, her phone was blowing up with calls from HR. But that wasn't enough. Not nearly. That evening, I filed for full custody of the kids, citing her infidelity and neglect as grounds for sole guardianship. The process was tedious, requiring mountains of paperwork and legal consultations, but every step brought me closer to reclaiming control. Not just of my life, but of theirs too. Throughout it all, the kids remained my priority. I made sure they had everything they needed: comforting meals, late-night talks, and distractions like movies and games to keep their minds off things. Still, the damage was undeniable. Emma cried herself to sleep most nights, while Jake grew increasingly withdrawn, snapping at anyone who tried to talk to him. One night, after tucking Emma in, I sat alone in the living area, staring at the pile of documents spread across the table. For the first time since discovering Sarah's betrayal, I allowed myself to reflect, not just on what she'd done, but on my own role in the breakdown of our marriage. Had I neglected her emotionally? Was I so focused on work and financial stability that I failed to see her unhappiness? Flashbacks surfaced, moments where I should have paid closer attention. Like the time she tried to talk to me about her struggles at work, only for me to brush her off with a distracted, "We'll talk later," or the countless nights we spent side by side, scrolling through our phones instead of connecting with each other. Maybe I hadn't been the perfect husband. Maybe I'd contributed to her feelings of loneliness and entrapment. But even if that were true, it didn't excuse her actions, or the pain she'd caused others. As the days passed, I found myself transforming. The man who once prioritized love and trust above all else was gone, replaced by someone colder, more calculating. And though revenge brought a twisted sense of satisfaction, it also left me hollow, questioning whether this path would truly heal me, or only deepen the scars. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. 2 days after filing for custody, Sarah showed up at our hotel room unannounced, her face pale and drawn. She looked smaller somehow, less confident, more fragile. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "We need to talk," she said, stepping inside before I could stop her. "About what?" I asked coldly, crossing my arms. "How you ruined our family, or how you thought you could get away with it." "I didn't ruin anything," she shot back, her voice rising. "You're acting like I'm some kind of monster, but you have no idea what it was like for me. You were never there, Mike. Never. I begged you to listen, to pay attention, but you just kept pushing me away. So instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat?" I demanded, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. "Instead of fixing whatever problems we had, you threw it all away for someone else?" "I made a mistake," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "A terrible one, but I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Not you, not the kids. I needed something different. Someone who cared about me. Someone like Ryan?" I spat, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did he make you feel special, Sarah? Did he treat you the way I apparently didn't?" "Yes," she shouted, surprising even herself. "He did. At least in the beginning, he did. He listened to me, understood me, made me feel like I mattered again. Can you honestly say you've done that lately?" Her words hit me like another punch to the gut. Was she right? Had I really been that blind? That absent? But even if I had neglected her emotionally, it didn't justify her betrayal or the pain she'd caused others. "So what now?" I asked bitterly. "You expect me to forgive you because you were lonely? Because I wasn't perfect?" "No," she admitted softly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know why I did it. Why I let things go so far. For the kids," I said, my tone sharp. "What about them? Did you ever stop to think about how this would affect them? About how they'd feel seeing their mom with another man?" "I didn't plan for them to find out," she protested, her voice breaking. "None of this was supposed to happen like this. I thought I could fix it before anyone got hurt. Well, it's too late for that, I replied coldly. They saw everything, Sarah. They heard every word. And now they'll have to live with it, just like I will. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, thick and unbearable. Finally, she let out a shaky sigh, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything. I never wanted it to go this far. Well, it did, I said flatly. And now we both have to deal with the consequences. As the fallout unfolded, Sarah's life unraveled piece by piece. Her boss called her into an emergency meeting, confronting her with the emails I'd forwarded. Within days, she was fired, humiliated and stripped of the career she'd worked so hard to build. Ryan distanced himself immediately, realizing the risk of staying involved outweighed any fleeting connection they'd shared. When she reached out to him, desperate for support, he ignored her calls altogether. Meanwhile, the custody battle dragged on, though it was clear from the start that I held the upper hand. With concrete evidence of her infidelity and neglect, the court granted me full custody of the kids. Sarah was allowed supervised visitation rights, but even those sessions were tense and awkward. One evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with wide eyes. "Do you still love Mommy?" she asked softly. It was a question I hadn't prepared for, one that forced me to confront uncomfortable truths. Did I still love Sarah? In some ways, yes, but that love was overshadowed by betrayal and broken trust. Moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting what had happened and choosing to grow from it. "Yes," I said finally, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But sometimes people do things that change how we see them, and that's okay. What matters most is that we take care of each other, me, you, and Jake. We're a team, remember?" She nodded sleepily, clutching Mr. Snuggles tighter. As I turned off the light and closed her bedroom door, I realized something painful yet liberating. Revenge hadn't healed me. It had only prolonged the pain. Now, faced with the possibility of moving forward, I knew the choice was mine to make. To hold on to bitterness or to start rebuilding myself. Piece by piece, in the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. A fragile but hopeful routine built around healing and resilience. The kids adjusted slowly, finding comfort in small moments. Jake teaching Emma how to play video games, or the three of us baking cookies on a rainy afternoon. Laughter returned, though it was quieter now, tinged with the weight of everything we'd been through. Sarah's visits were sporadic at first, marked by awkward silences and forced smiles. She tried to reconnect with the kids, bringing gifts and apologizing profusely, but the damage ran deep. They tolerated her presence out of obligation, not affection. It broke my heart to see them struggle, but I knew time and consistency would help mend the fractures in their relationship. For me, moving forward meant letting go, not of the memories, but of the anger that had consumed me for so long. Revenge had given me a fleeting sense of control, but it hadn't erased the pain or restored what we'd lost. If anything, it had shown me how destructive bitterness could be, eating away at joy and leaving only emptiness behind. One evening, as I sat on the balcony of our new apartment watching the sunset, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. Did I still love Sarah? In some ways, yes, but that love was overshadowed by betrayal and broken trust. Moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting what had happened and choosing to grow from it. The story ended not with forgiveness, but with clarity. Sarah's actions had changed me, forcing me to confront flaws I hadn't wanted to see. But in doing so, they also gave me a chance to start over, to build a future not defined by anger or regret, but by resilience and self-discovery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter how hard life got, I wouldn't let bitterness take root again. Because peace, I realized, wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning to live beyond it. Emma joined me on the balcony, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Do you think Mommy will ever come back?" she asked softly, her voice filled with hope and uncertainty. "I don't know," I admitted, kissing the top of her head. "But no matter what happens, we'll always have each other." That's what matters most. She nodded, resting her head against my chest. Life would never be the same, not after everything we'd endured, but maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe this new chapter, however imperfect, held its own kind of beauty. A family learning to heal, one step at a time.